1. Jump gate activated.
Boom!
I love saying that.
It's the Zocalo here. I like how that is our new introduction. It's kind of perfect.
Right?
Yeah. We just need the little sound effect, the little beep, 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 beep.
Right.
Yes. Oh my gosh. We'll have to work on that. See if we can't get that done. Anyway, this is the Zocalo. I'm Char. This is Norm. We're your lovely hosts. And we are today embarking on a whole new journey, a new chapter for the Zocalo. This is going to be episode 1 of season 1 of our HBO Max watch.
That's
right.
right.
Oh my God, Norm. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited too. I said in the Twitter notes that this is like the first time for both of us to be doing a rewatch at the same time, because you did it for the Nerd Party Network for Babel for 5 with your husband, Patrick.
Right. It was his very first time watching the show.
Mm-hmm. So now you and I are joining forces with our collective experience of watching Babylon 5 from the past and now watching the remastered version. And now usually, when people like sign on, they're like, what's the topic of the day, their du jour, if you will, and what are Char and Norm going to be talking about? Well, we're going to be talking about every single episode of the Babylon 5 HBO remastered edition, because there's a lot to be seen. I say seen, right?
Yeah, and that is no joke. Oh my gosh. Just even watching one episode now in its entirety, and I realized, man, why did I wait so long? HBO Max put Babylon 5 on its platform, what was it, back in January of this year?
Late January or early February, somewhere around there.
So I was a little, just kind of wishy-washy about it. Like, yeah, that's great. It looks amazing, but I've seen Babylon 5 and I've got other things I need to be doing.
Right.
Well, you guys, I'm so glad that this prompted me to finally start watching, because it really is good. And if you want to watch along with us, I highly recommend this.
Do you even think that we should go as far as maybe do what people do when they do a rewatch and do like live tweeting when you watch it? I was thinking about doing that, but I'm not sure if...
You know what? We did have one of our regular viewers and friends of the show, Summer, suggest that to us. And I thought about that and wondered if we shouldn't do that on occasion, or do some sort of a live watch party on our Discord server to really invigorate some activity there. We ought to discuss that behind or off the camera and come up with some sort of a plan, just because this is kind of an event for us.
I think so. It'll be super fun. And speaking of events usually are these grandiose, long planned schedules. And this is going to be no different. We're going to do all 110 episodes.
That's right.
One per show here on the ZócaloCast. One per show.
Right. We decided that last week as we sort of tried to plan this out with our viewer input, and decided we needed to give every single episode its due. And especially these earlier ones where we're going to be pointing out all sorts of things brand new for the first time. We don't know exactly how much time we're going to take today, but we're going to try and use this as a baseline. We have our segments ready to go. We have a lot to talk about, Norm. And I think before anything else, we have to take care of one order of business, a very important order of business. And that is the salute. That has not changed. So, to everybody who is with us, hello. Thank you for joining. And to you, Norm, and to HBO Max and Babylon 5, Joe Straczynski, everybody else, Valtu. I'm drinking a lot of water today.
My body is good today. No
Brevari for me today. I'm good.
No Brevari today, Brevari tomorrow. There's always Brevari tomorrow.
There's always Brevari tomorrow.
That should be on a shirt.
We could use some shirt ideas. That's a very good one.
Check. Now, I wanted to just kind of start off with asking you a question, Shari. I asked to, put this in the notes. So why is rewatching this remastered edition so important?
Okay.
Well, a story as well crafted as Babylon 5 was kind of lost in translation. It has seen releases in VHS and on DVD. Those were okay. The streaming quality on, say, Comet TV and on Amazon, not so okay.
Yeah, we talked about that last week. Not great.
It still kind of gave everyone a chance to at least watch it. But sometimes, it's you only have one time to make a first impression, right? And if people wanted to watch Babylon 5, and if Babylon 5 wanted to make the best first impression, this is probably the best way it's ever going to do it.
Agreed.
Yeah. Because technically, just to do a couple of technical notes here. So Babylon 5's original camera negatives were scanned in 4K. That's pretty high quality, at least as high quality as scanning can do. I know they could probably do scans in 8K, but it's probably just not even, that was overkill.
Yeah, but really 4K is as good as the eye can see.
Right. So you had them scanned in 4K, then they were downsampled to 1080. Now, I'm sure that for streaming purposes, that was important because they don't stream at high data as much as a 4K streaming would stream at high data. That would kill your data caps, on your streaming services.
Your bandwidth probably couldn't handle that very well anyway.
But also at the same time, though, the CGI effects that were created by Foundation with the Amiga computers that they used, back in 1993, those effects could only be scaled up so far, so they could only be upscaled to 1080 at best. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So you had the source material, the live shots, the non-composited shots, composited shots, I should say, in high resolution, scaled down to match the visual effects shots that were upscaled to 1080. This is kind of the best blended, seamless way of producing and reintroducing the show to a modern audience with modern TVs.
Sensibilities and standards and what have you.
Yeah.
Yes. That does lead to a question that I had for later, but now might be the more appropriate time to ask. Does watching the show in a 4:3 resolution bother you at all in 2021?
Not for me, because if I was rewatching, say, the new Battlestar Galactica, or was watching something that I watched, even in Enterprise, right? Yeah. Those were all done in, at least Enterprise was shot in 720, but it can be upscaled to 1080 very easily. So those shows, and they did, and those shows were very easy to transition, mentally at least, from it's not 4:3, it's not, and it's not widescreen artificial 16:9 pushing in, right?
Yeah.
So since Babylon 5 was broadcast at 4:3, I want to see it in its original broadcast ratio.
It seems appropriate. It feels right, doesn't it? And I think it is just because maybe we did see it in the 4:3 format first. Mm-hmm. And you, Jen, or Norm, are you considered Gen X, like a late Gen X baby?
I think so. I was born in 1972.
Okay, so you're Gen X.
Yeah.
And I'm an old millennial. I was born in 1981. So maybe I'm a zennial a little bit. Either way, we watched a lot of TV in the 4:3 format. I think it's possible that has influenced our opinions somewhat, because we watched a lot of TV that way, still do somewhat, because a lot of the older shows like Babylon 5 still broadcast with that ratio. But here's another thing is, we watch media in all sorts of different screen sizes these days. And so I'm wondering, for maybe younger audience members who grew up watching quote unquote TV proper and movies in a 16:9 format, does it matter so much? Because you're watching TikToks with a vertical alignment. You're watching things in all sorts of different screen sizes, landscape, and on iPads and desktops and all over the place. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So is this just another size?
I guess it's just basically, do you have the source material to compare it against? Because if you watched something, if you've never seen something before, even from decades ago, and it was done in that, zoomed in 16:9 format where you're losing about 20% of the original source material, if you didn't have any knowledge of it prior to that, you probably wouldn't really notice the difference. But like anything, if you are a super passionate fan about something and know exactly what something should look like, something should sound like, what the final presentation should be, and that was altered in any way, then you would probably say, I really wish I had the original format for it. Case in point, the 1978 Battlestar Galactica Ultimate Collector's Edition on Blu-ray released two versions of the show, the original 4:3 and 16:9, because fans of certain generations were able to see it in 16:9. But if you played them on separate machines side by side, you can see how much of the image is actually being lost when you zoom into it to make it fill a widescreen TV.
Nice. But depending on what your preference might be, which is probably whatever you saw first, giving people the option of either format, either size is really smart.
Yeah, it's like ultimately the most ultimate collector's edition of anything that I've ever seen. Yeah.
That's very cool. Well, hey, before we get into more of our observations as we start getting into our deep dive of Midnight on the Firing Line, how about if we do a quick recap and just a little bit of basic info on the episode itself, just to bring people up to speed, just in case you weren't able to watch the episode before this.
Right. And before you do that, Char, I just want to let everyone know that what we're going to be talking about, we are going to try our very best not to jump the timeline. We're not going to like Sector 14 anything. So that
not yet anyway.
Not yet. So yeah. So we're going to try and stay pretty true to talking just about the episode as the episode, and so that people can watch this either now or later and not get spoiled. So this is as much as we can make it a spoiler-free zone.
We're going to try. This is very hard, and the longer we go, the more difficult it's going to get. But we'll put in the effort. We're certainly going to give it a go.
All right.
All right. So Midnight on the Firing Line originally aired January 26, 1994, written by none other than Joe Michael Straczynski and directed by Richard Compton, who was also the director of The Gathering, was he not?
I believe he was. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. All right. So very quick recap. I wrote this summary. This is not from anywhere. Tensions escalate when the Narn attack a Centauri colony. Raiders attack transport ships near the station. Ivanova explains to Talia why she feels attacked whenever she sees someone from the Psi Corps. Garibaldi shares his second favorite thing in the universe with Delenn. That's what you need to know about this episode.
In a nutshell, without too many details, yeah.
We're not going to give you a play-by-play recap. Either you've probably seen these episodes or you're going to watch them, and yeah, you can meet us here.
Well, that is kind of like the goal for this. This isn't going to be an episodic rehashing that, there are so many great sources out there that have already done the episodic rewatch and all the commentary on that. What we want to talk about is we want to talk about all the great new stuff, or actually the great old stuff that looks new.
And that's just it, right? I mean, I have seen the comparisons. I've seen all of the articles about that, especially when the show was released on HBO Max. And I knew I was going to see a better, more vibrant product with more clarity. But really, you do have to experience this for yourself. Like if you've ever worn glasses or contact lenses, it's really like putting on a fresh pair. And it's like you are seeing something that it's familiar to you, but in a completely different way, as if this is the way you should have been seeing it all along.
Yeah, and I think that's the great thing about the technology is that you know what you're watching. It's like reading an eye chart. You know what the letters are. The eye charts don't change. You can really cheat the system. You're cheating yourself, really, as the old saying goes. But when you really see this on HBO Max Remastered, and you know the source material, really take a look at what you're watching, because I think that will surprise you immensely. And I guess that leads in my first question here, Char. It's like, what are you watching the remaster on? Is your TV a 4K TV, a high definition TV? Because sometimes there's an algorithm in 4K TV software that will upscale it as far as it can go, the image quality, so that sometimes it might skew that already processed 1080 image quality. But so what are you watching on right now? Or do you think you're getting the best picture streaming quality that you're getting?
Probably, yeah, for streaming, probably. I'm just on a good old HD TV. I think I got my TV 2013. It's a few years old at this point, but it gets the job done. I'm not that picky. How about you?
So I'm watching it on a 4K Roku TV. But what I was concerned was when I'm watching this streaming in 1080, I thought I was going to see some type of like some type of picture skewing, but I don't. And that kind of at least keeps me from buying something different as a TV, because I don't really want to buy a new TV just to watch Babylon 5. I would, but I can't. So I'm fine with it right now.
That's very expensive.
Yeah, I'm fine with it right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm curious to know what other folks are watching it on and if that has affected your viewing experience at all or not. How about we start getting into some of our more general observations? We kind of started with that. Let's jump back in.
Sure.
Okay. Now, from frame one, I am already seeing a difference. And that was a CGI shot of ships and the station, or
Right.
like the colony, basically.
On
And I
Ragesh
thought,
3. Yeah.
Ragesh 3.
Hmm.
Yeah. Immediately I'm like, oh, this really is different. Okay, buckle up. I'm excited. I'm ready to get in. Not every single little thing is going to blow you away, but the overall experience, heck yeah.
Yeah.
Really freaking good. I think there's just a little bit of disparities with some of the CGI where especially when you've been watching non-CGI shots and you see just how crisp everything is, where you can see a stray hair on Londo that's not in line with the rest of the peacock hairdo, something like that. And then you go to the CGI and yeah, okay, not quite as bad, but if you were to compare it to the DVD, oh my gosh, the difference is stark.
It is.
There's teeny little things that you might notice as a longtime repeated viewer, but really, their wow factor is there. There were so many little things that I was able to focus on, in part because of watching the show so many dang on times. But looking for the details was a pure joy, and I saw so many cool things.
I mean, the big stark difference to me at the very beginning was the color saturation and the palette. The contrast is really there, and I think that has a lot just to do with going in there and doing even a slight color timing remaster will bring out a lot of kind of like the nice lights and brights and darks, and especially the depth of space. One thing though that still wasn't really well adjusted or well remastered was the actual planet of Ragesh 3 behind the station, because you can see that that's still a little low res.
Sure.
Those things may improve throughout the course of the seasons, because season 1 really does. It was probably the most nefarious of showing the visual effects flaws in the series overall, and it does improve over time as they improve the quality of their PC rendering machines over the course of the seasons. Bigger budgets, or more money being invested into that post processing. But
and better quality of just being able to make better animation as they were going along, as they learn new things, as the technology improved. I fully expect it to get better as we go through the seasons myself.
Yeah. But there's also sometimes where on the station, anywhere where there's like a really nice, fine, straight line or a clean line, that's where I noticed some artifacting or jogging, like in the actual visual effect. That was there before. It's still there now. So you're not really seeing an improvement there. Actually, you're seeing it a little bit more defined, because this is where
because of the sharpness.
Exactly. This is where the resolution issue can be a detriment sometimes, when they upscale.
Right. And in season 1, I imagine we're going to see little bits of that at play. What I'm curious to know is will that go away as things do improve with the seasons going along or not? I don't know. Maybe by the time we get to Severed Dreams, are we going to be saying, oh my gosh, look at that?
Right.
Yeah, no, I have not watched ahead. I'm not going to either. I want to take each and every one of these episodes one at a time as intended.
Yeah, I'm doing it the same way. And I think that this is still where models still have the advantage over CGI shots, because the models are physical. They're being caught on physical, they're kind of physical sources, like the film sources. They're being composited in, instead of overlaid on top of a very, finite resolution, data cap of line screen. So yeah, like if you really wanted to compare it to, Star Trek Deep Space Nine at the time, I don't want to do that specifically every single time we watch an episode.
Can we not?
No, but in that era, Star Trek was still, even Next Generation, they were still using models. And
absolutely,
it still does show the quality of model work versus CGI work.
Yeah, very different, with advantages and disadvantages either way.
Right.
Yes.
So what else do we see?
Well, let's see. I mean, I have a whole thing about costumes, but before we get to that, one of the very first things that really did blow me away was just how vivid the jump gates are.
Mhm.
how much better they are in this rendition. They are so much more vibrant and vivid, and it's as the jump gates were intended to be seen. Because it reminds me a lot of what we saw in Lost Tales.
Right.
That CGI sequence,
Mhm.
it's very much like that.
Okay.
And it's
Yep.
beautiful.
Yeah. Now it's because the color contrast and again the color timing, you're seeing a lot more of like the really deep blues of space and the blacks in space, but then you see that kind of like that fiery type of vortex pattern in the jump gate.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's very,
Uh-huh.
very nice. And also when, say on Ragash 3, when the Narn ships came through, those looked super crisp against that fiery vortex. It was spectacular to see for the very first time again.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. What are some other visual differences?
Well, one thing that really kind of struck me as funny is that I don't know if Jerry Doyle was coming off of a vacation hanging out on the beach, but for some odd reason, Garibaldi just looks super tan in this episode.
Well, he hadn't been spending 12 hours a day on set for several months of the year, so maybe he was
Exactly.
getting out a little bit.
Yeah, and you can kind
What
of
I
tell,
noticed was the hair, of course. There's a lot more of it.
well, with his hair, because he's so tan, when you have a tan, when you have longer hair, when you get a fresh haircut, it leaves a little bit of like just a faint scalp line of shade that
Oh,
protected your face against like extreme sun. So he did have a little bit of that going on, and this is
oh,
the kind of
interesting.
stuff that we're picking up on these new
This is the stuff we
remasters.
can see. Now, I did
Yeah.
not pick up on the whole tan line, so I'm glad you did. This is going to be our collective effort.
Mhm.
Also, if you guys are watching along with us in the audience here, let us know what you have seen. Let's try and make as comprehensive of a list as we can. One little tiny thing that I noticed for the very first time
Mhm.
was at 1848. Yes, I've got time codes. There is a scratch on Peter Jurassic's neck, and
After
I
they got
wonder what
they strangled
happened.
each other. After they strangled each other.
Maybe it was from that. And I thought, like, did that actually happen? Does he actually have a scratch on his neck, or did they put that in makeup to have that much detail? Because
Right.
I've never picked up on that before.
And that's the kind of thing that you can see now. It's pretty amazing,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah.
Oh
And if
man, it's so freaking cool.
and if that is the case, if it actually was a makeup effect and not an actual accident that happened, because accidents do happen and they just roll with it, they'll just incorporate that into the story. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of visual detail that is part of the narrative that shares that type of that violent act that he suffered at the hands of Jakar. It was a real thing, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
So, I mean,
it just
wow.
it adds to the depth and the complexity of the story.
Yeah, if that was intentional and was put on with makeup, bravo for that attention to detail. And speaking of attention to detail, the one prop that really took both of our attentions was Londo's gun prop that he put together.
Love that so
All
much.
the little wires that you see in there. I mean, for
Mhm.
a prop that has what, not even a minute of screen time,
Yeah,
really?
right.
They did not half-ass that prop.
No, not at all. Nope.
Yeah, super cool.
A little bit here, a little bit there, but that's how you get past security looking through your stuff,
It's
right?
pretty smart.
Looking through
Yeah,
weapons. One
yeah.
one of the things I thought was interesting though, and this is just from a continuity standpoint, when the Narn fleet came out of the jump gate or their jump point, and they attacked Ragash 3, the fighters are Narn heavy fighters, but the heavy cruisers aren't typical looking Narn heavy cruisers, and I'm hoping that we'll see maybe a transition into what the standard larger they're almost like these giant red fork-tongued type of looking cruisers later on. So
Mhm.
uh, yes, if they wanted to make it look like it wasn't a Narn fleet attacking them, I can see that from the heavy, like the big massive cruisers, but the little bitty ships, they
Sure.
were Narn fighters for sure because we've seen those before.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another interesting detail was
Mhm.
that was that to try and kind of deflect a little bit, or was it a behind the scenes thing where maybe the design had not completely been nailed down yet and it modified as they went along?
I'm thinking more along those lines. Yeah.
It might have been a little column A, a little column B. I mean, you can
Yeah.
rationalize it
Right.
with that explanation as
But
they were
it's like
trying to deflect blame.
the clearer those ship silhouettes are, the easier it is to see that it's not what the models will become.
Yes.
Right.
Also, you've got to remember, if you're watching this for the very first time, you have no idea what a Narn heavy cruiser is to start with.
Right. This is true.
So
Mhm.
it's a pretty easy thing to kind of blow off.
Yeah.
Okay. How about we start talking costumes? This is what I really, really, really took note of
All
for
right.
this episode. Well, that and hair and food and drink. So these things are very super important.
And they're
But
like,
what really
they're in the forefront, right?
Oh my goodness. Yes, the costumes really shine in this episode. And I don't just mean with like shine and luster, because I did notice just how much, especially with Londo and the fabrics that he wears, they're a lot shinier than I've ever noticed before. They're really brilliant in that sense. But go to, let's see, let me find the time code here. Oh, okay, 248 right off the bat, pretty much. You take a look at Veer's costume. There's a lot going on here, by the way. We've got kind of like the gray part of his coat, which has this seamless pattern, which I'd almost liken to like a carpet in a way, where it's just kind of this abstract pattern. I don't mean it in a bad way. It's not ugly. But then you've got the striped part of the jacket, which is in blue. And then underneath the jacket, he's got a darker blue shirt that's got like a subtle dot pattern. Now, you'd think stripes, dots, abstract pattern, putting that all together would be a hot mess. But the way it hangs together and the way you can see all of those patterns in the way that they do, plus with the really nice vibrant yellow, it works.
Right.
And I had to hit pause and just stare at that for a hot moment of, okay, the costuming, they're trying to basically say that in the future, patterns are very important. You've got to have shiny stuff. And that's not atypical of futuristic things. They like shiny and metallic looking things. But then we're playing with a lot of textures too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it's very theatrical. It's very stage theatrical. You know, you want these certain characters to stand out. But I mean, going back to certain, like, you know, if you want things to be reflective and shiny in the future, they really like just hit, you know, they hit it out of the park with this. I mean, especially for me, seeing on Londo's purple jacket in that same scene, you can actually see the shimmer of gold in the actual gold fabric, because the resolution's so good now that every time Londo moves, you can actually see the shimmer of how the light hits it differently, and on the jewels, you know, on his medallion. And it's just, it's so fabulous. It really is.
Speaking of Londo's costume, I have a question for you as well as our audience. Okay, I'd never really noticed these little, I don't know if they're like little brooches or if they're just sewn into the costume, but for a while, like everywhere there's a gold piece, at the very end of it is a little thing, and it's almost circular. It's kind of peacock shaped, like the Centauri hairdo. And I thought, oh, is that the emblem of the Centauri Republic? And that's what that design is. Turns out it's not. I had to look it up. It's not the same thing, but it's very Centauri-esque.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just wondering, does that mean something in particular, or is it just a Centauri design? Do you know? Does anybody know?
Well, I mean, I think that, you know, with the Centauri, anything that's of stature that makes you feel like you're higher in the food chain than anyone else, like the opulence and the extravagance, and, you know, being able to show off your material wealth or your prestige, anything like that is obviously very important to Centauri. Keeping up appearances is important to the Centauri.
Which is why the Centauri have several layers to their costumes. And of course, Londo, in this same outfit, he's wearing his medals and the whole bit.
Yeah. I mean, even his waistcoat, when he was talking to Sinclair, and then later on with Veer, when he threw the bottle of Bravari, I think it should have been probably Bravari, at one of the god statues. You know, he had a very iridescent fabric style of a waistcoat. And I'm like, wow, that's just, it's really catching so much light and reflecting a very prismatic spectrum of just so many different colors and patterns that we never got to see before. So it really does bring a lot of that effect, that, you know, that peacockishness of the Centauri really to the forefront. Yeah.
Because peacocks they've got their vibrant, shimmery colors as well. Very peacock-like. Yes.
Peacock-y. Yeah.
Yes. There's some great stuff in the comments too. I want to say hi to everybody. We haven't called out anybody by name yet, but if you're here, hello, and thank you for joining us. And one thing that did surprise me a little bit costume-wise was Jakar's costume does have a little bit of a more like luminescence, but it's not quite as stark and revealing as in seeing new things as I thought maybe there would be.
Well, I think that
At least to me.
his costume translated well from the very beginning. There is, again, a little bit of that liquid crystal-esque prismatic quality to the sash in his costume and maybe to some of the jewels, but it's a very muted,
Yes, the
very burnt
jewels.
copper-ish type of tone, which doesn't reflect a lot of light. It only reflects
Mhm.
certain details.
Yeah, which I think again is a very interesting intentional design where his costume is more matted
Hmm.
in luster as opposed to Londo. And I was not completely expecting that for some reason. I did expect it to be a little more metallic-esque in that way of having a shine. And you
His
know what?
cape,
That's
though,
okay. What?
his cape, though, did look fabulous.
The cape. Gosh, the cape really does. As he's walking across the meeting room, you really take note that he's wearing a cape, don't you?
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Yeah.
One thing I did see on Jakar's costume that I've not taken a whole lot of note of before is these two little blue jewel-like things on his left shoulder.
Hmm.
They're there. I'm not entirely sure what they mean, but they are there.
Well, it's there. I think there are a lot of costuming choices, design choices that maybe we've never seen before. Maybe they don't have a purpose. They just look great, and now they look even better. Right?
Yeah, kind of like Kasha's costume has that piece that looks sort of like either like a stained glass or mosaic pattern to it. So does that, I don't know, that privacy wall that he has in his quarters that he's sitting behind.
So much.
Got to say that I love that sequence. You really see the ball of light as it's moving, where exactly Kosh is.
Mm-hmm.
That's super cool. Can we talk now about Earth Force uniforms now? I mean, as far as aliens go, Delen's costume, there again, it's a lot of patterns, but it's like a muted color palette of browns and not a whole lot to say. She's kind of got the more bathrobe-esque look going right now, and her costumes are going to get a lot more interesting later.
Well, when she's probably more of the focus on the next episode for Soul Hunter, we'll see a lot more about that.
So we'll say more about Delen but I really thought, for the first time ever, the Earth Force costumes, or uniforms. They're costumes, but they're also uniforms. How good they look. Really just good. How official. I mean, it's not that kind of that stiff fabric where it's durable and it's got a certain kind of quality to it. And the way the Earth Force uniform hangs together really just looks so nice.
Yeah. It's like seeing it for the first time again.
You know what I did see for the first time was that there is an Earth Force logo at the front of the belt.
Mm-hmm.
I never noticed that before.
It's the hardest belt buckle to find. Believe me, I've tried.
I'm sure. Yeah. I had no idea that was there until yesterday when I watched this episode.
Yeah, it's a little diamond with the 5.
Oh, man. It's beautiful. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, all the details, like from the epaulette pins, you can see the brushed stainless steel work in there. You can see the tinting in all the different rank pips, if you will.
Sure.
You can see the different tinting in the rank bars, on their chest. But the one thing that really stuck out to me the most was the Earth Force badge. Pretty much anything that has like a badge, like the Earth Force badge, especially the Psi Corps badge, Talia's Psi Corps badge. Every time you turned, it caught like the high intensity lights that were shooting the scenes, right?
They should have inserted lens flares.
Or, I mean, those are reserved for the jump gates. But now I understand why, say the Star Trek pins, the Star Trek comm badges weren't chrome, because they would catch so much light, and they're there all the time.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, good observation.
They would catch light. They would catch fingerprints. You'd have to keep wiping them off. It was just better if they just had a matte finish. I'm not saying that the Earth Force ones are going to have that, but at least they don't touch them all the time like they did on Star Trek.
Sure, right. I mean, could you imagine just how much work would have to go into keeping those things looking good? Yeah, no, they made a good choice there.
Exactly.
But I did notice how shiny Talia's Psi Corps pin was, but just because it was so reflective, like, whoa, okay, that thing is there.
Right. And the actual Psi, the symbol in there looked like it had like almost like a hand hammered design to it,
it does.
Texture to it, which looks
hand
awesome.
fired, baby.
Yeah, it looks fantastic.
Yeah, it did look very good. One thing I noticed about Talia is that she has double pierced ears.
Yes, she does. Yeah.
Again, something I never took note of before that I could see here.
Yep. Yep. And I think the further we watch, the more that we'll just see way more detail in the costumes, especially costumes to come. But
100%.
we're halfway through what we were going to turn into a half-hour show, but it doesn't look like it's going to be the case, Char.
Well, there's just so much to, I think, maybe establish
Yeah.
in this first episode. I don't know if this will necessarily be a barometer of the timing of episodes to come. We'll have to kind of see. But shall we keep going?
You got the next tracker.
Okay, hair tracker. This is very important. So, first observation, Centauri hair is not perfected here.
True.
It's a little longer. Londo's definitely got a big hairdo, and it's not quite as seamless and perfect as it gets later seasons, especially. Like by season 2, there are no gaps in the hair for either Londo or Veer, or really any of the Centauri. Here, they're doing what they can with a lot of hairspray, it looks like. But
yeah.
It's not quite the same, and it's not as shiny. By season 2, Londo has very shiny hair, and that's not the case here.
Well, the more power you get, the better conditioner you get on the station.
Well, conditioner is very expensive, I'm sure.
Well, yes. With Londo and with Karn and with Veer, I mean, these are the Centauri that we see primarily on screen, close up. There's an old story. Maybe Earl can also chime in on this one because he knows a lot of good behind the scenes stuff. So there was a joke, I think, that Peter tried to pull on Joe. When he was in the makeup chair, he actually put the wig on upside down and had the makeup artist or the hair effect artist comb it as far out as it could go, just a goof, and show Joe. It's like, look, we have the new wig. This is a Centauri look. And Joe doubled down on that and said, I love it. I think it's great. You're going to have to wear this now. Right? Exactly. So he called Peter's bluff and said, yeah, I think this looks great. We haven't really set any precedent yet for the Centauri hairstyle. So you just did. And now you get to look like that in perpetuity for the rest of the series.
And you know what? It worked out so well. I'm so glad it happened.
And
Can you imagine the Centauri any other way?
I mean, this is one of the sticking points that people had when they first reacted to, some of the publicity photos in the trade show magazines at the time, Starlog and Cinefantastique. When they saw Jakara, it wasn't so much a big deal because, Jakara's alien. He looks like an alien. He had great prosthetics. Andreas looked very good in that. But then they saw Peter in the Londo hair, and they're like, oh, no, I can't get on board with that.
I guess it looked too goofy for some people at that time. And meanwhile, I'm just thinking, I'm glad that there's a lot of variance between the look and feel of our alien cultures. After you've seen so many monocultures in Star Trek, and hey, look, I love Star Trek, but Babylon 5 is making a point, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, they're really going for it. And they're like, if we got one shot at this, we're going to take the best, most elaborate, most ostentatious shot ever, because they're like, we don't know what's going to happen, so might as well 100%.
Get it on. And you see that level of effort, especially when you're panning the camera in the meeting room and you see the different alien species. You've got, I think, like a proto-Pakmara. Looks not quite the way we normally would see them, but it's almost there. We've got the Brakiri. I don't know if there was a Drazi in there, but you see a variety of aliens.
Super cross-eyed, though. I don't know why.
Was he?
Yeah. He almost looked like bored to tears. He got cross-eyed, right?
Poor guy. Yeah. All right. And we mentioned with the hair tracker, Garibaldi already. That's done. That's what I have for hair tracker.
That's baseline hair for Garibaldi. Midnight on the Firing Line.
Stay
that's
tuned
the most amount
as
of hair.
It starts to fall off. All right. Let's go to a food and drink tracker.
Okay.
Couple of general observations. Blue drinks, definitely a thing on Babylon 5. Right at the very start, I think you mentioned Londo is pouring himself a blue drink. And then later on in the chamber during the meeting, Delenn has a glass of some sort of blue substance as well. Now, I'm not saying those are the same exact thing. It's just we're in the future and we have to have non-water looking drinks.
And it looks good on camera. That blue picks up really well on camera.
Right. Yeah. Also very prevalent, especially at the bar, of course, are drinks with fruit slices on the rim. They're all the rage right now. That's a big thing on the station. You see them throughout the whole episode. They're all over the place. You mentioned last week this next one where Jakar is eating fresh spoo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Bright blue on the outside, white on the inside. And I noticed the texture looks soft and almost marshmallowy. So off camera, we theorized that maybe that was marshmallow cream.
And you can also see that it wasn't just a prop. I mean, Andreas was actually eating it because the blue dye on the spoo made it to as far back as his back molars.
To his mouth.
And he's yelling at Londo. You can see it in his teeth.
Now, was that spoo or was that chewing gum? Because I saw that and it looked to me like Andreas had put in a piece of like green gum and had forgotten to spit it out by the next take.
As far as I could tell, it was pretty much the same blue dye as you saw on the spoo. I think that he was probably supposed to eat it. Maybe they shot a scene where he was actually just sitting there eating it while Malari came in on the other side of the stage. But it's possible that it could have been some kind of chewing gum, but it just looked like he was actually eating the product as the prop. And Andreas is that kind of an actor. You know, he kind of goes for it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I would love to know if you're watching the episode, go to time code 1118. That is the scene in question where is it gum or is it the spoo in Andreas's mouth? Look in close, guys.
The bottom line, though, there's something that I didn't see before, and that was just the weird color that was inside his mouth during that scene.
There's definitely something there for sure. Yeah. Okay. Other things I noticed, we have Garibaldi going to town with a spread of food, eating as if it is his last supper. One thing that really catches my eye is there's this bright orange something, which looks surrounded by a bunch of dark grapes. I'm guessing that's supposed to be some sort of a fruit prop, but I have no idea what that actually is. If anybody can tell me what that is. And then next plate is 3 ginormous pieces of meat that he's just gobbling down. And then another plate full of side dishes.
He eats like a starving man.
My goodness. Yes. Chowing down Garibaldi. It's a good thing Dr. Franklin isn't a presence yet on this station, at least as far as we know, because he would really get on Garibaldi's case about this.
Food plan.
Bad food plan.
Food plan.
His cholesterol's got to be through the roof.
Yeah, wait till we get to the Banya Calda.
Oh yeah. At the bar with Ivanova and Talia, I noticed that there, instead of like at a bar where you'd have peanuts or popcorn or some kind of salty food to entice you to feel thirsty, there's something that's a little more multicolored that I figure serves the same purpose. It looks like dehydrated soup makes because it's got little bits of green and orange in it. And it doesn't look that appetizing, but I think that's the idea.
I think that like, you know, in the kind of like the pattern of things that we're saying, there's a certain reoccurring theme that Babylon 5 really intended to be colorful, really intended to take just advantage of the full advantage of, you know, the palette of everything, you know, almost to the point where it's like almost overdone because, and it's just because that we've been, you know, used to a certain, for lack of a better term, sterile kind of palette. You know,
it's true. Yeah. Kind of more muted in say the TNG days.
Yeah.
Where things are a little more earth tony or even on Voyager, things are much more monochromatic.
Right.
And even though Voyager hadn't happened at this point yet, but no, it's kind of hearkening back more toward the days of the original series where things were bright and vibrant colors. You're using kind of a hard color palette.
Yeah, exactly. Wow.
Yeah.
Good observation. What else?
Okay. More food. Ivanova gets a dirty martini at the bar toward the end of the episode. Time code 3949. And then toward the end of the episode at 42:47, Sinclair is munching on something that looks like Chex Mix or pretzels, something of that. And then there's an orange drink. It looks like orange juice, but not good quality orange juice. And so my theory is that it's Tang.
Future Tang? Because
Future Tang.
That stuff
Tang,
doesn't spoil.
it never expires, so you can have it whenever you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so there's my food tracker. I spent way too much time making notes about food in this episode.
No, I think the food tracker is great because we're going to see, well, it's going to be food tracker, drink tracker, hair. I mean, there's so many things to take, you know.
Costume tracker. We're tracking it all, man.
Yeah.
That's why this episode's going to go a little while. Favorite quote? I want to know
Favorite
if you
quote.
have a favorite quote. I would like to make this a feature at every episode because there are times when, like, Joe tries to put in one really funny moment or at least one really profound moment, something in each episode that really gets you thinking and enjoying it. What in this episode does it for you?
My favorite quote.
Yeah.
This just cracks me up because I think it's funny, but it also has a lot of, well, I don't want to go into Sector 14, but there's a Sector 14-esque quality about it.
Okay.
So it's when Sinclair asks Ivanova if who she's going to vote for, and she said, "I do not like Santiago. I always thought that a leader should have a strong chin. He has no chin, and his vice president has several. This to me is not a good combination." And as much as I appreciate Claudia saying that and performing that line, it's very well done. That just oozes Joe. That line oozes Joe.
It's very Joe-esque.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think my favorite quote is also from Susan Ivanova, but it's a different line. And it is, "If you'll excuse me, I'm in the middle of 15 things, all of them annoying."
I know you love that line.
I love it. I've mentioned it before. Longtime viewers probably knew that was going to be my pick, and I don't care. That's how much I love it.
I think it's a great quote, and I think it's also really great that both of our quotes come from Commander Ivanova. I did have a runner-up though. It was really close between these two.
What was your runner-up?
Well, it's because Sinclair sets up what he did to Jakar with this quote, and he said, "My father always told me if you want to see the real person, make them angry." Or in a fight, make them angry. That you get to see the real person. And he did the exact same thing to Jakar, in the hydroponics area, because he basically baits Jakar into getting angry.
Yeah. He put those words into action. That is a very good runner-up. That's the more profound observation rather than the kind of comical or witty one.
Yeah, but it's just because that pays off at the end. So it's neat that you're seeing Sinclair and the way he thinks. He's thinking like a chess player. He's looking at these moves very far in advance and plotting his strategy very carefully.
Yeah. One thing I really like about Midnight on the Firing Line, just generally speaking, is if you're paying attention, you can see just the brilliance of the intricate way this story is telling you so much.
Mm-hmm. I have
little things like that. Or just even the way Garibaldi is eating. That says a lot about who he is and the way that he works as a person. Ivanova and her quotes, her attitude speaks a lot about who she is as a person. And then when she tells Talia about her mother, that's going to have a lot to do with things in the future. I'll just say that.
Before we get into our final analysis, let's take a look at, first of all, say hi
Let's get to comments.
Everyone here and see some of the comments. I'm going to scroll all the way back up. So, of course, we'll say hi to Terry Lynn. Hey, Earl, thanks for joining us.
Hi, guys. And Joanna.
My friend Dan from London, or from England. I'm not sure if he's from London, but I know he's from England. He runs the Space Boat.
Oh, and Dana's here. Mm-hmm. Been a little while. Hello.
Hi, Dana. Joanna is here, or Joanna. We haven't really confirmed that yet, but
no, we're not sure which. Please tell us. We want to get it right.
I did catch here. Dana said that I just canceled CBS All Access because I wasn't watching Star Trek Discovery anymore. I signed up for HBO Max so I can now watch the new improved Babylon 5 fair trade. Absolutely, hands down.
I agree.
Fantastic trade, worth the price in Latinum.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm considering maybe putting my Netflix subscription on pause while I'm not watching that, because lately I've been doing a lot of Hulu, and then now I'm doing HBO Max. So I think it's perfectly acceptable to be kind of, on and off, or, on again, off again with your subscription services. There's so many anymore. It's kind of impossible not to.
We're kind of like at that a la carte stage where, if it's not, if that particular segment of the buffet isn't tickling your fancy, move on to the next.
Go to the next one.
Yeah,
absolutely. Earl has a suggestion for the Andreas Katsoulis "What is in his mouth" thing. It's spoof flavored gum.
The more I thought about that, the more it's possible that he may have been chewing something that smokers, because he was a smoker.
Yep.
Smokers used to chew this gum all the time. It was a gum back in the day called Freshen Up, and it had a gel-based center. It had kind of like almost a mouthwashy, minty gel in the center of it.
Freshen your breath a little.
but it also shot out a fairly decent amount of that colored dye in the gel.
Uh-huh.
So
I wonder.
it's possible that they were like, you know what? If he chews that, then we can, it probably is both gum and spoo at the same time.
So it's winter fresh spoo.
They actually had it with the blue one. I think it was their spearmint flavor. It
Okay.
was like white with spearmint, like toothpaste, that kind of blue toothpaste.
Yeah.
color.
Now I wonder with the spoo flavored gum, are there a variety of choices?
We'll have
Because
to
if
see.
you look at the gum aisle, there's all sorts of you can do the minty stuff. You got the cinnamon. You have got bubble gum. I want to know the range of spoo flavored gum.
I think we may even see different varieties of spoo being served in the Zocalo there. I also
happen.
I think that somewhere on the tracker should be signage that we can actually see and read now in the Zocalo.
Oh, okay.
Because I've
All right,
always
let's
wanted to
add
know
it.
like what the vendors are saying or what's on top of their awnings or on the walls, or things like that. Those small things. I really want to kind of like start tracking
Small
those
things.
too. Yeah.
Well, did you take notice of the TV display panels in Sinclair and Garibaldi's quarters by chance?
Yeah.
Apparently, those come standard in everybody's quarters because it's the same prop. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
But I noticed I had to pause and take a look at what the writing was just above the screen while they're watching Duck Dodgers, Delenn and Garibaldi.
Mhm.
So let me find this real quick. Sorry. Okay, so the brand apparently is a Scan XA3 because that's at the bottom, like you would have a logo for pretty much any kind of TV. And then at the top it says Active Matrix Multimedia Display.
Boom. Don't know what that means.
Put that out there.
I bet you, prop either set designers or prop designers or people that need to fill the scene, they dumpster dive like pros. They know exactly what they're looking for, what they're going for. They probably found an old Fry's somewhere, in the LA area that was just unloading massive amounts of stuff. Because whatever gets unloaded doesn't necessarily what it's going to end up as being. Case in point, the one thing, and maybe this should be like one of those kind of things like what's the weirdest thing that you saw in the episode that you actually can see now? I texted you this. There in when Londo was talking about his dream, on the wall behind him is some type of strange Centauri fine art piece. But the one piece that stuck out, the one detail that stuck out was over his shoulder. And it was what I call or what professionals call a French curve.
Okay.
It's a stencil that you use to draw curves with if you're a drafter, like a pen and ink drafter.
Okay.
Very much like the circles and kind of like rulers that you get. But it looks like somebody just used that, spray painted the pattern on it, and now it's like behind Londo forever in Midnight on the Firing Line.
Huh.
Look at it. It's like towards the middle of the episode. Again, it's where he came back from choking Jakar after eating spoo, and he was telling Sinclair that he's sorry. I will not repeat it. But it's over his shoulder. I'm like, that's a French curve. But to most people, it's just Centauri decor.
Yeah, abstract art.
Yeah, abstract art. But you'll find things like that later on.
That's so cool. Oh, Joanna or Johanna has a suggestion for what that orange fruit might be. A kiwano. I think that's how you say it. Kind of like spiky looking, bright, vibrant orange fruit. If I just Googled it, it very well could be.
Starfruit.
I've never had one.
Starfruit is a very big sci-fi fruit.
It's true because it's exotic looking. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Any other observations you want to put out there, or should we start moving into our final thoughts?
Yeah, I think we can start wrapping things up here.
Okay. So how about you go first? What is your final analysis of Midnight on the Firing Line?
Well, I'm not going to say anything new. And I think that you said this actually perfectly at the very beginning. When I saw this 2 weeks ago from when we're talking about it right now, I was just passing time. I was thinking, hey, you know what? I'll watch HBO Remastered and see what it's all about because I haven't really seen it in earnest. And, I just want to see it start from the beginning.
Yeah.
I didn't think that I was going to get blown away. I really didn't. I was just going to be like, oh, yeah, it looks good. Right. There are a couple upgrades. It looks better than DVD. I wasn't wrong, but I didn't know how good it was going to be. I didn't know how well polished it was going to be. I didn't know how different certain details were going to be. I didn't know how certain things in the narrative changed because you can see new things. So that to me just, it blew my mind. I'm like, okay, they really did spend a decent amount of effort, not a Herculean amount of effort, but a decent amount of effort to bring the quality of this series, or at least what we've seen so far, to something that is definitely watchable, so that people won't be able to use either poor image quality, poor special effects as a means to turn down watching this series. They don't have that anymore. And I think that because it looks so good, they continue to go from episode to episode of episodes. I know many people that stopped dead cold right in the middle of Midnight on the Firing Line just because they don't think that it just looked good.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I remember a couple of people who tried Babylon 5 when it became available on Amazon Prime and just said, I can't do it. I agree. Now there's no excuse. Mm-hmm. This is pretty freaking good. I would have no reservations about watching Babylon 5 if you're brand new to it. The quote unquote dated special effects do not matter here. Watch this episode and let it put you at ease with that concern. And then just start investing into the storyline and you will not be disappointed.
Okay. I totally agree.
Yeah. What's your final rating as far as like seeing this as in a rewatch with a whole new set of eyes? How does it grab you?
I still think that this is a highly rewatchable episode. I'm actually rating it 4 out of 5 data crystals.
All right. Data crystals.
I love Midnight on the Firing Line. I mean, it sets a tone, right? Yeah. The reason why it's not 5 for 5 for me, it's because it's a very common trope type of story. It's very story by rote, right?
Uh-huh.
But, and again, not to jump the timeline, it seems that way now. This is what the mind-blowing thing about Babylon 5 is all about. It seems that way now. It seems very tropish, very rote, until you see what they lay down in this episode as a foundation between Londo and Jakar pay off seasons later.
You have no idea.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
Insignificant details is kind of should be like the subheader of Babylon 5. Insignificant details that lead to monumental course changes in the series. And that's what you're seeing here. The other thing I love about this episode is that you really do feel like the characters or the actors that play these characters know what these characters or who these characters are from the very beginning. I don't feel like they're stumbling over their performances or not connecting timing-wise with each other in terms of characters. I think that they know exactly what the characters are. They set a very high mark for characterizations, for nuances. The only thing I said that just keeps it for being perfect for me, aside from the CGI and stuff like that, it's just that you can see it as being a very tried and true type of science fiction story.
Sure. Yeah. I can't disagree with you on that. It's not an explosive, it's not going to blow you away kind of an episode, and it's not intended to be. This is an introduction, and I still feel that Midnight on the Firing Line is the best introduction you can give to someone to Babylon 5. Don't have them watch in the beginning, don't have them watch The Gathering. Start them here.
Yeah, exactly. The Gathering, I mean, first of all, it wasn't remastered. So,
okay, can we bring up that whole thing, because it's considered episode 1 on HBO Max, but is not upscaled and throws the whole episode order off.
I know. And
can they please fix that? It bugs me.
For our purposes, we're going to label these episodes and watch them in the order as they were intended.
Absolutely.
2 things that bother me about that is, at least on HBO Max, is yes, they label The Gathering as episode 1. The other thing that really ticks me off is that they actually have a picture of Londo as Emperor Malari in the snapshot of that episode in the title card.
Yeah,
so
no.
Somebody
messed up.
For what HBO did in remastering this, or getting the Warner Brothers to greenlight the mastering of this, why just completely stumble when it comes to those small details?
Yeah, I don't know why they dropped the ball on that. It's really weird.
Yeah.
I I'm going to try very hard to pretend that that's not there. That's not happening.
Nope.
So Midnight on the Firing Line, I'm going to give it 3.5 out of 5 breathing apparatuses.
That's good.
Yeah, you're going to learn a lot about the B5 universe and its characters in this episode. You should not skip it. And in fact, if this is your very first episode, just pay attention. There's a lot here.
Right. And since you have it, it's streaming at your disposal, watch it a lot. A lot.
Yes. Watch it often. Repeatedly and often. So that's what I've got on Midnight on the Firing Line, and we have filled an hour.
Unbelievable.
I didn't know if we would. Turns out it's not hard at all.
No, it's not. And we got that's one down, 109 to go.
All right. Well, I'm very excited that we've embarked on this whole journey. I can't wait for next week, where we're going to do Soul Hunter and do it all over again. What will we see?
Hair tracker on the Soul Hunter. That'll be interesting.
It's very exciting. And if you want to keep talking with us about Babylon 5 or anything really about life, we have our Discord server. I'll put that into the chat. That link will last for 7 days. That's where a lot of our regulars are. And I apologize to those of you who are on the Discord server. I've been very quiet as of late. I've been very busy with end of semester stuff, but I'm still there. Please keep the conversation going. And Norm and I are thinking of ways to generate just a little more life in the Discord server and keep things really invigorated and fun there. So stay tuned.
And we'll probably put a post up later on to see if, if you would have some fun with us every once in a while doing a live tweet of the Babylon 5 rewatch that we're doing here. That could be a lot of fun too. But yes, the Babylon 5 global community is having a little bit of a renaissance. And I think it's just because of this Babylon 5 remaster. It is absolutely, I mean, if Midnight on the Firing Line if it sets the tone for the rest of what we're going to be watching, we're in for a fantastic rewatch.
I'm fully prepared to be blown away when we start getting to the really, really, really good stuff. I can't wait. And I also hope HBO Max starts becoming available in places outside the US. I know we have folks in Canada who can't watch this right now, the UK. Hoping with time that's going to change.
And I just want to, yes, Earl, the next episode is about, because I have to do this in character, Cheetos, Fritos, Mantares. Yeah. So we'll leave you with that. We'll leave you with that.
Oh my God, that should be the episode title.
Oh my. Cheetos, Fritos, and Mantares. Oh my.
Oh boy. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, that's a great note to leave off on.
Yep. So as Dan at the Spacebook said earlier in the chat, please, if you like what you've seen here, please hit the like and share and subscribe button. That allows us to be able to reach out more in the YouTube universe and to get more people on board with what we're doing here. I know that sometimes people are wary of say our type of format because we jump into so many different topics, and because so many people are coming in for the first time, this is a spoiler-free zone. So there'll be I would encourage you to tell your friends who are getting into Babylon 5. Now you can actually join in on the conversation because you won't have to worry about not having seen the rest of the 5-year season in context of what's being said. So
right. Yeah. Terry Lynn, to answer your question, we are doing the JMS viewing order of episodes. So there's a link to that to list that, and that's how we're doing it.
Yep.
All right, Norm. Well, this was a lot of fun. I am so excited that we get to do this 109 more times.
Totally, right?
Yeah. There's nothing. It's not at all daunting. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I can't wait.
I can't wait for the next one. And the next one after that. And the next one after that.
I'm going to have to find a way to pace myself here.
Once a week. That's why I think this was a good idea that we didn't try and shoehorn two and 30 minutes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we definitely chose correctly. I feel very good about that now. Yeah. All right, everyone. I think this is it. This is a wrap.
Until next time, be seeing you.
Take care, everybody.